All right, good evening, and welcome to a very special episode of Smashing Apps. This episode of Smashing Apps is all about creativity on the iPad, and it's being made as part of the Apple Festival of Learning. I'm joined today by three incredible educators, all of whom are going to share a little tasty morsel of something on the iPad to get you inspired, and hopefully give you some ideas to use in the classroom. We've got Eoin, we've got Laura, and we've got Faye, and we're going to look at GarageBand, Keynote, and Freeform. If you'd like some more information about any of these ideas, head over to the Apple Education community, and you can even reach out to us on Twitter as well. So without any further ado, I'm going to pass straight over to Eoin, and we're going to learn a little bit about GarageBand.
Hi everyone, I'm Eoin. I'm a teacher in Dublin in Ireland. I teach music and geography at a school called Loreto Abbey Secondary School. So today I'm going to demo probably the app I use most in the classroom, aside from Keynote maybe. It's GarageBand, which is essential to how my students make music in the classroom in terms of how they learn music and how they become music creators and expand their musical ability in that way. So what I'm actually going to share is the first two lessons that I do with all new students, and also the way that I introduce staff who are not necessarily musicians either to GarageBand. It's a lesson that I call One Chord Groove, and it's a great way to give people that kind of first really positive experience of music making with GarageBand, whether musicians or not, but also introduce a lot of the key features of GarageBand and some really, really key elements of music. And as I said, with that great kind of element of success at the end of that, where they really feel like they've genuinely created something as well as learned a little bit about music. There's a lot of ways in the classroom then with my music students, we can go further with that, and also ways that if you're not necessarily in a music class, but you want to introduce a bit of music, that the music you create can then be learned in other ways. So the two lessons that we do are actually, there's kind of two pathways in GarageBand. There are traditionally what people make music in a DAW, in a DAW is with tracks, and also in GarageBand then we can do it with live loops. But I'm going to demo how to do it in tracks today. But all of the things that I'm showing are kind of interchangeable between the two ways of doing it. Okay, so first we'll open up GarageBand, and I'm going to create a new tracks song. So a good way to set the vibe is, I would always tell students, particularly with electronic-based music, is to go with drums. And GarageBand is this amazing feature called Drummer, which is, these are real drums sampled in. You've got acoustic and electronic and loads of other drummers that you can install. So I'm going to go with electronic. And Leah is the default drummer, but here's one I've chosen earlier. I really like Maurice, the boom bap hip hop drummer. So I'm going to go with him. And what we can basically do then is just hit play and have a listen to the drum beat that we're given, and then start to customize that. Now, there's nothing wrong with that at all, but on the left-hand side where it says presets, I can tap here and I can choose a different preset. I can then alter the XY pad on the left-hand side to change around the beat. So I can make it more complex or more simple or louder or softer. Then I can also add in other parts of the drum kit. So you can, I've just added in a shaker there, for example. We can move the fill slider to add some more fills. That will change bar 4 and bar 8. We'll hear a fill now. There we go. And we can also change the pattern on the kick and the snare and hi-hat. Basically, I'll tell students not to get too bogged down in this, though, just to find a beat that they like. So when we've got that, we've got the basis of a really great track. Now, usually I tell students to let it keep playing as they add more things, but just so, just for clarity with this today, I'm just going to press stop in between so you can hear me a little bit clearer. So we've got our drums already set up. We could obviously spend as long as we wanted on that. I'm now going to maybe go and add bass into this, because if we have drums, next thing to do is probably to have bass. So I've gone with kind of an electronic hip-hop drum kit. So maybe I won't use the Paul McCartney-inspired Liverpool bass. I'm going to maybe change this to maybe something a little bit old school and the retro bass. So the whole idea of one chord groove is that you can just have one chord, and there are loads of genres of music and styles of music that you can really emulate those styles, create really great sounding things just with one chord, and learn all of the different features of GarageBand at the same time and feel really successful. So I'm going to press I'm going to actually use the autoplay patterns. You'll see them up around the top right there. And what we can do is these are absolutely magic. So if you don't have a bass guitar or play bass or don't play keyboards very well, like me, you can use these. So for example, I could choose pattern 2 in autoplay, and I'm just going to use a C chord for this. So a nice, bright, happy. Now, I've no idea whether that sounds good yet with my drums. So the best thing to do is to press play and then to try different patterns. So for example, if I hit play, I'll try pattern 4. Kind of cool, not kind of the vibe I want to go for. It's a little bit too Ghostbusters. It's maybe pattern 2. That sounds pretty good. There's also a top tip for anyone. If you can tap the chord strips with 1 finger, 2 finger, or 3 fingers, which is a little difficult, but to get a variation on those. We can hear a little bit of a difference there. Then when we're ready, we hit the go to beginning button, just left of the play button. And then I'm going to hit record. And another top tip, as it's counting in, tap your chord and then just let it record all the way across the ruler. I always say to students, let it record all the way across the ruler until the ruler turns green. And the ruler is where you see the numbers at the top. So here we go. The whole thing with a project like this is really what we're doing is we're actually developing our producer skills. And one of the most important things is not just do all of the dials and things do, but what do things sound like? A producer is there for their ears, one of the most important things. So we're listening all the time. There's one thing to be good at music, it's another thing to be good at sound. So there's our bass line recorded. So we're going to maybe add, I might just add one more thing for now. So I'm going to hit the tracks button, the third one across, the one that looks like a brick wall. It's called the tracks button. And so I've got a bit of music going already here at the moment. So we could continue in the same way to add different keyboards or different synthesizers or lots of different instruments, just to show you what some of those look like. We have guitars. We've got some world instruments. We have different keyboards, and there's every sound imaginable there. We could have percussion tracks with the drums. We can have strings, whatever we want to do. But I'm actually going to add in a loop here. And this, again, is where we bring out those producer skills. So I'm going to hit play on this. And I'm going to hit the loop button up in the top right, one that looks like a little kind of a roller coaster loop-to-loop. So here's some that I prepared earlier. So I've got 3 here. I've got Above and Beyond Synth, Fast Future Synthly, and Lucky 7 Synthly. And basically, you can go through any of the loops in GarageBand and all the different genres and descriptors and find things that you want. But really, it's your ear that's going to do this. So let's try the first one. Ooh. Now, I think we can all agree, hopefully, that that doesn't really sound too good. Let's try the next one. That's a bit closer. I think I would definitely like to back to that loop again and maybe use it again. Let's try the third one. That sounds pretty good. Pretty happy with that one. Pretty happy with that. Imagine the one I picked earlier sounds pretty nice. So when we're ready, I'm just going to press stop just so you can hear me clearly. All I need to do then is to add this loop into my track. Is to literally just pick it up, drag it across all the way over to the left below my other tracks. Make sure it goes all the way over to the left. And then we drop it in and there it goes. We can also swipe out from any of the track headers if you see the instrument icons, and we can adjust the volume levels here. You can actually see my voice coming through a little bit there as it's picking me up. And we've got a perfectly serviceable, great track to start with for someone starting off to sound like they've really made some music. So that's an example in tracks, but we can add in lots of different synths. But also, I've used the drummer today, but you can also, how I would teach my students about drums and how drum beats work, we can build a beat with the beat sequencer. It's one of the amazing features of GarageBand. So it could be in live loops. We could be using the beat sequencer or the drummer. And here's an example of one in live loops. So you'll notice a darker kind of tonality to this one, because I'm not using the C chord. I'm using its evil twin. I'm using the A minor chord for this one. So a much different vibe, but again, only one chord. And just to show that we can go the whole other end of the spectrum as well. So if maybe you were doing a film project with students and they wanted to add in some film music and something really dramatic, there's all of those orchestral instruments and those amazing autoplay patterns in here as well. So here I'm using live loops, which people think traditionally for electronic music, but I'm using it with a very traditional sounding orchestral sounds. And again, just one chord. So I think we can hear from that one chord can really go a long way. And you can really get started creating music and making music just with one chord and learn about all of the different things in GarageBand. So whether you're a teacher trying to complete the Apple Teacher program and learn about that, or you want to bring music into your classroom but you're not too confident, or in a music class, this is genuinely how I start with my students. And that provides then actually a great link into some of the Everyone Can Create resources, particularly the Everyone Can Create project, Write Your First Song, which has 4 chords in it. So it leads in really, really well into that. And then we can expand on those and these things can be combined. So how can you learn more, I hear you ask? Well, if you want to scan the QR code on the screen right now or the short link below it, bit.ly/one-chord-groove, you can download my Apple book all about this, and learn how to create your own one-chord groove or bring one-chord groove into your classroom with your students. Thanks very much.
Incredible. Thank you so much. It's genuinely a joy watching you do that and creating that music, and you feel very like, yeah, this is lovely. This is so important to see this happening. For me personally, I've always been a little bit nervous in the past about using GarageBand because it always seems so daunting and so overwhelming. But I think what you've managed to distill there is the kind of the core essence of creating a piece of music and making it sound better than like a screeching racket like I would normally be able to make in the past.
Yeah, that's exactly my intention, and probably comes from how I started with it as well. I had the background as a musician, but I'm also aware that a lot of the musicians in my classroom come in, but they've never made their own music. Like they may be very proficient at learning a piece of music and how to play that, but they've never made. So it's a great, and they've also got that barrier of whether they're a musician or not, of how to use a piece of software like GarageBand. I think people are very daunted by it. So the idea of something like this, or some of the Everyone Can Create resources, is to remove that barrier and to give people that really positive sense of, I really made something here and it sounds so good and so easy. Like I'm a music teacher, but I'm one of the few music teachers that does not play keyboard. So it's a great way that I can kind of leverage particularly those autoplay patterns and things like that to get something that sounds great. And there's such a variety of what we can create there as well.
Yeah, those autoplay patterns are absolutely incredible. The fact they're there for so many different types of instrument as well means that you haven't got to be an expert musician to make something that does sound really good. Faye, Laura, have you used this in your classroom, the one chord groove at all?
I haven't yet, but I'm so excited to try it. I've got a new student exploration group, we call it, that's starting this term, and I know they'll absolutely love it. And I think I was the same as you, Jacob, for a while. I was quite nervous of GarageBand. I thought it would be a lot more complex than it actually is. And as soon as I started using it and following some of these tutorials, I just realized, first of all, how simple it is to get started, but also how satisfying it is when you start to make things.
I think for me, just seeing this as inspirational, and like yourself and Faye, I'm not musical at all. I'm more the drawing element, but you make it so accessible, Eoin, that I can see going forward using it with the media department. I've recently taken over the media department, so something that I'm looking forward to take back, that they can create their own music to go with their production pieces, which is really exciting.
Yeah, and the whole idea of those 2 different chords is that you can go so many different directions with that, depending on a piece of art or visual art or video or drawing or anything like that. There's music's got a place in all of those things and beyond, and into the more traditional academic subjects as well.
One thing that strikes me actually hearing Laura, Faye, and then thinking of what I said myself is that we all said we're not musical people, we're not good at music. And it makes me think about how I feel when perhaps a member of staff comes into a computing lesson and says, oh, I'm not very good at computers, but I'll do my best. And that always makes me feel like, oh, no, you don't say that in front of the kids. You know, you need to kind of have some confidence when you go in. Do you kind of feel that same way, Eoin, when people say, oh, we're not musical? And do you feel like perhaps it's worth getting stuck into GarageBand and following some things like the resources that you've made so that we would feel more confident when we deliver that in front of the children?
I think with something like music, because attending music lessons is sometimes out of reach for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I didn't start until my mid-teens playing music, and then just couldn't get enough of it. But it's what people really mean, because they come in thinking you've got to be a musician to do this. Like how can it sound as good as those examples with just one chord unless you understand music? And like if you can hear and listen, you can do that. So I think what people really mean is that I've never learned any music. You know, it is really what they're saying in that. It's not that they're not musical. It's maybe it's in there. You know, but it's a great equalizer as well. Like I sometimes find with a group of students or sometimes with a group of staff doing these things, some of the most amazing examples of things like this, or when you do maybe more of a 4-chord song, like the Write Your First Song project, with Everyone Can Create, is that sometimes the non-musicians actually, they have maybe a slightly non-traditional approach to pairing of instruments and things like this that can actually yield some amazing results. So, and it can be a really, really great equalizer. It's an interesting dynamic to see the more accomplished musicians sometimes not necessarily be at the top of the ladder with that. So I love that anyone really can start making music with something like this.
That's very encouraging. Eoin, thank you very much. That was absolutely awesome. And we're going to have a look now at something very different. And we're going to head to Laura, who's going to take us deep into Keynote, if I'm right.
Hello. So I'm head of art and photography and digital media at a school in South Wales. And the aim is to bring digital art into all areas of the curriculum, but also for it to sit alongside traditional methods. I think particularly a lot of pupils we come across, I can't draw, I'm no good at drawing. But I've always found that when they start drawing digital art, there's a different mindset that pupils tend to have. So something I'd really like to share. Okay, so we're going to be looking at Keynote today, and something which I absolutely love about Keynote is that we can make artwork interactive and we can become part of the artwork ourselves and bring our drawings and illustrations to life. So this project is part of an alter ego project that we look at, where I get pupils to explore who they are and part of their identity and what would their alter egos be. So I always choose food, because I always think it's something that everyone has got food that they enjoy, but also it's really easy to put in different scenarios. We've done projects as well where pupils have created worry monsters. So particularly during the pandemic, when everyone was quite stressed out with the situation, they created worry monsters that they interacted with. And some of them crushed them, some of them threw them away, some of them became friends with them to accept their worries. So it's a really diverse project. You could use it across the curriculum as well with maybe historical characters. There's all sorts of things that you can do with this where you can create a really interactive piece of artwork. So we're going to look at Keynote, and I'm going to introduce you first of all to my little donut character. So a lot of pupils will say, I can't draw, or I don't know how to do this. So the real joy of Keynote is that you can use existing images to draw over the top of. So I've just got 2 examples here of a picture of a taco and a sombrero. And I'm going to show you how you can then easily create these different kind of illustrations and bring them to life. So we're going to start off with a basic kind of introduction in how to basically draw over the top of images. And I always find this is a real leveler where all pupils can trace, and starting off in this way allows everyone to feel empowered and feel that they're able to do this. So I'm just going to show you, I've literally just taken an image off the internet and dropped it in. And the next thing I can do is click on there. If you've got an Apple Pencil, you just tap the screen. But for those of you using your finger or using an alternative stylus, you click on there and you click on drawing. At the bottom, you will see a number of tools. So for outlining, I tend to use the second tool. And if you tap onto it, it gives you an option of different line thicknesses. So for outlines, I tend to go for the second or third one. So you get a good balance between the outlines and then the content within there. So I want to show you the colours as well. You can see you've got your basic colours there. You've got the primary colours, green and black. If you click onto the spectrum, you've got the grid. You can select your colours along the spectrum as well. And you've also got sliders you can adjust. I personally like the grid because I think it's really clear. You've got a nice choice of colours coming through. At the bottom, you can also change your opacity. So if you want it to be slightly see-through, that's a really good option there as well. So I'm just going to select black. And the first thing that I'm going to do is draw around my shape. If I draw around my shape straight away, when I start adding detail, you'll find that the image is going to come through too strongly. It's going to be quite difficult for you to add your details on. So I'm just going to undo, which you can do at the top. I'm going to come out of the drawing and I'm going to tap onto my picture. We're going to click on the brush. So the good thing to remember, your brush is for editing, whether it's for text, whether it's for images, always click on the brush to find out how you can change things. And what we're going to do, we're going to click onto style. And again, you'll see opacity. So we use this word a lot. It's a good word to introduce as well as part of the literacy around creative media. So whether it's in photography, whether it's in drawing. And we're going to reduce down the opacity, probably just to about 40%. That way you can still see the image, but it's not going to distract you from your actual drawing. So once you've done your opacity, you can come out of the brush. We're going to go back into drawing and we're going to choose our pen in black, and I've got the middle weight. Okay, this is then when we start drawing. So I'm going to trace the outline to begin with. So you're going to think about as well maybe the different facial expressions you want to add on. And just maybe some more details. So I'm going to keep it simple with the black outlines there for the outline and the facial features. The fill tool is a great one. So it looks like a traditional paint tube. I've got it in black. As long as the shape is fixed, so like the eyes, if I double tap, it fills them for you. So that takes some of the time out of that as well. Because the edges are all fixed here, so we can see that there's no gaps between these, this means that that area can be filled. So make sure that all lines are kind of secured to the ends, that there's no gaps between them. I'm going to choose a golden colour for the taco. Again, I can double tap and it'll fill that for me. So this takes out some of the time that maybe some people might spend trying to colour it. It's a really nice way to get a really nice base tone. So I'm going to actually add in an extra bit in the back of my taco because I want to see some of the shell coming through along the back. And again, there's no gap. So I've kind of closed that line, which means that when I go back to my fill and I want to fill it, it will come through. So I'm just going to click onto the spectrum. And you can see here there's a little eyedropper tool. So I'm going to click on that. And if I click on my taco, it's going to choose exactly the same colour. So sometimes we forget the colours that we use. So the eyedropper tool is really useful. I'm just going to double tap on the back to fill the back part of the shell. I want to add some texture in now to create my lettuce. So I'm going to use the crayon tool. And I'm going to go in with the green to create some lettuce. And it just brings a different dimension again. So you can check the width of your line on the middle width again. I'm going to go darker with the green so it's not transparent. There's no opacity on there. And I'm just going to add in some texture for my lettuce so that it gives the character a different feel to just having the strong black lines. So as well as this, I need to add in some of my beef, some of my tomatoes, and some of my cheese as well. So I'm just filling in some of the gaps just to bring a little bit of texture to the drawing. So this is a great way as well for pupils to be introduced to some art-specific vocabulary. It's a good way for them to make connections between some of the work that they're doing in class with other areas of the curriculum. And you could even look at different countries where and with like what the cuisine is like, bringing characters to it, bringing in some use of language. So there's all sorts of ways that you could use this as part of your curriculum. It doesn't have to be an art lesson. And I think particularly with art, a lot of people think that it's separate to the rest of the curriculum, but there's all ways that you can use this. I think that in primary education, there's a far more flexible approach to using creative activities than in secondary education. And I think that's something that we can all embrace creativity a little bit more. Okay, so I've got my character. I'm quite happy that he's done. But what I would think about now is creating maybe some tone on there as well. So generally with pupils, say, you've created your character, how can we take this to the next level? So start thinking about creating just some highlights and some darker areas to make it look a little bit more realistic. So again, I use the fill tool. I'm going to go to the spectrum, click on the eyedropper, and select the tone of the taco. So you can see on the screen that it shows you on the grid the colour you've chosen. So to create darker tones, I'm going to click on 2 colours above, and I'm going to just draw in some. I'm on the rubber tool, so that's not very useful. I'm going to draw in just some shadows using the fill tool. So as well as tapping, you can draw these shapes in to create the illusion of some shade and tone. So you can be very specific to the shape that you want to use. I'm now going to look at adding highlights on the top. So I'm going to go 2 colours below from the original tone. So I'm going to click on the eyedropper to make sure I've got the accurate colour. If I go 2 or 3 colours below, this is the same tone, same colour, different tone, sorry, so that you can create your highlights coming through. That way, it brings a bit more life to your character. Another thing that I'm going to look at doing is adding in a shadow, because when I add them onto my photographs, I want to look like it's in the right context, so it looks like it's placed on my plate. So I'm going to go in again with the fill tool. I'm going to use a grey rather than a black, but I'm going to reduce the opacity. So there's that word again. Opacity is used an awful lot. And by reducing my opacity, it gives a slight see-through effect, which means it doesn't look like it's out of place. So I'm just going to follow the shape of the taco, and it looks like it's sat in situ. So there's my character. Okay, so I'm going to click on done. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add this into a situation. So this is the fun part that a lot of pupils really enjoy. Some of them get a little bit embarrassed, but there's a lot of role play, there's a lot of acting. As well, to enhance this part, you could get pupils to draw a plan of the scenario that they want to create. Is there any text that they want to create? So they can add in maybe a kind of comic book idea. And as I mentioned before, it could be based on languages, it could be based on cultures. So you can really bring some depth to this project. So I'm going to create a new slide. So I'm going to click on the plus at the bottom, a keynote, and I'm going to click on blank. I'm going to go back then to adding in some photos. So I've got the images that I'd like to use. So I'm going to select my first one. So here's me pondering over my plate with my taco. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my drawing just by clicking on it. And then I'm going to click on copy. And then onto my image, I'm going to tap on the actual slide and I'm going to click on paste. Oh, I pressed the wrong one there. So I'm going to click on the image, click on copy, go to the slide with my photograph, and then I'm going to click on paste. And as you can see, the taco is now on my plate. So this is where you need to experiment with scale. So changing the size to make sure it works in, because right now I have a giant taco, which is probably going to eat me, not me eating it. So I'm going to place it onto the plate. I'm going to reduce the size. So as you can see, there's little blue dots in the corner. If you come down from a corner rather than from the middle one, it's going to bring it down to scale. So you're not going to have a distorted drawing. So I'm going to place it on the plate there. I'm going to add in a new slide again. So we click on the plus with the little box at the bottom, and then we're going to go to my images, and I'm going to add in the next photo. Okay, we're starting to get a little bit more complicated now because I need to place the taco in my hand. So I'm going to paste in my taco again. And this time I'm going to use 2 fingers and change the angle. I'm going to make it slightly bigger so you can see his face. But right now, you can see that he's not in my hand. So we're going to go back to my favorite word, opacity. And we're going to click on the brush, and we're going to reduce the opacity of the drawing. So I've clicked on the brush. You can see that it says drawing opacity. So I'm going to reduce the opacity so that I can still see my taco, but I can see my hand through the taco. We're going to go back to drawing. And this time we can use the eraser to remove the part of the tacos where my hand is. So if you click on it for thickness, I'm going to keep it on that thickness there. And I'm literally just going to rub out where my fingers are. Gone a little bit too excited there with my erasing. And the best way to get accuracy in your drawings is zoom in. And then that way you can make sure that you are getting it accurate and that you're removing the areas that you need to move for it to work the best. So even though I'm using a lot of an Apple Pencil, the majority of my students don't use the Apple Pencil or a stylus. They do this all by hand using their finger. So you can get the accuracy within the work without using the tools. But obviously, to get really accurate work, the Apple Pencil is ideal for this. It's definitely worth the investment when drawing. Particularly if you're working with the older students, a lot of my A-level students use Apple Pencils because they're able to get the detail within their work. But for starting off, pupils can do this just using their finger as well. It's a really accessible task for all pupils. I use Keynote with pupils from year 7, so aged 11 years old, right up to 6th form. So 18-year-olds, at Key Stage 5, is such a diverse tool, and it offers lots of opportunities. Okay, so I've erased now the part of the drawing. I'm going to click back onto the actual taco and increase my opacity, and the taco is now in my hand. Okay, the scale looks a little bit wrong, so before you rub out, you might want to do that. But it does, the size of it does emphasize that it's in your hand. So it's about getting that balance right. So the next thing I'm going to do now, so if we just have a look at them both, we can see if I present that we've got the taco on the plate and now the taco in my hand. Always check for detail. So just by playing it, I can see I've forgotten to rub out the shadow. So it's always good just to go back in, play it so you've got a clearer view of what you might have missed out. Because sometimes when you zoomed in and drawing, you don't notice some of the finer details. Okay, so we've got the taco in hand. We're going to do one more so you can see the next stage. So I'm going to add in a new slide. So the plus at the bottom, add in your new slide, go to your photos, and I'm going to eat it this time. So I'm going to do this one as if I've taken a bite out of it already. Okay, so I can show you how you can take it to the next level. So I'm going to again paste. I'm going to remove that. I'm going to paste my tacos back in. This time I'm going to place it in there, close to my mouth. But I think I want to change the expression as well on my taco. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to have a shocked looking taco because I'm going to take a bite out of him. So what you can do to change the expression, I'm going to go back into drawing. And what I really like is a selection tool. Okay, so you'll see this little tool on the end. It's a little bit like a rubbing tool that we use in art to blend colours. And what this does is select. So I'm going to draw around the mouth, and it makes a selection. And then you can see separate. So I'm going to click on separate. So now the mouth isn't part of that whole drawing anymore. So if I click on it, I can delete it, but it still leaves the rest of my drawing there. I'm going to go back into drawing, and I'm going to draw a shocked mouth. So I'm going to go back into my black pen, and this time we're going to have a shocked mouth. I'm going to then fill it. I need to increase my opacity and change the colour because I was still on the grey. And oh my goodness, I'm shocked. But what's going to happen is a part of the taco's gone missing. So I'm going to create some bite marks, but it's really easy to do with just the rubber. I'm going to zoom, I'm going to undo that because it's gone a little bit too excited there. I think it's too thick. So I'm going to thin it down, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to just create bite marks here so that it looks like a chunk has been removed. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back in with the pen just to refine those edges so it looks like a big chunk has been taken out of the taco. We're going to come out with the drawing, go back into opacity so that again I can rub out the area where my hand is. So using the rubber tool, I'm going to go a little bit larger this time. It's too thin. When removing and when shading, something I always teach my pupils is follow the shape of the object that you want to remove. By following the shape with your strokes, it means that you get a more realistic outcome. And this goes for traditional drawing as well as digital drawing. Following the shape and shading or removing will make it look more realistic. So I'm going to come out of drawing, back to my favourite brush, increase my opacity, and there we have the shocked taco with a bite being taken out of it. Right, let's come out of here. So I want to see now my series of images. So we've got the taco on the plate. I've picked up my taco. I've eaten my taco. Okay. What you can do then is, I'm just going to add one more in actually, just so you can see the next stage. The taco could jump out, and again, it's about the placement of your taco. So I'm going to go back to this, and I'm going to have it on my shoulder. Again, I'm just going to paste, and he can come to the corner and I'm going to make him sprout some legs and change his expression as well. So perhaps have him, yeah, maybe there. It looks like he's jumped out of my hand. So I'm going back to drawing. I'm going to use the selection tool. I'm going to separate that area and delete that mouth. Just bear with me. So delete the mouth. I'm going to go back to drawing, and I'm going to make him sad this time because he's been eaten. And this is a lovely way as well for pupils to express their emotions of how they're feeling. There's so many things that you can do with drawing that can bring some enrichment to your classroom. My pupils absolutely love doing this sort of thing. And what you can do as well is you can add in some lines to show that he's jumped. Okay, so if we go back to the beginning of the slides, we're going to press play. So I'm just going to tap along, and you can see the different images. Okay. Next thing to do now is to export these as a GIF. So you can see I've got a lot of work in slides I've worked on creating different characters on. The nice thing with this is you could have a whole working slide, so you can have up to, well, as many slides as you want in the GIF, so you can really build your story coming through. And what we need to do is export as a GIF. So I'm going to click on the little arrow. So you can see on mine it says presentation 81. If I click on that little arrow there, I can click on export. And you've got loads of lovely options. So like, this is why Keynote is so diverse, particularly for creative media projects. So, you know, even linking in what Eoin has been doing with the music, you could create an animation in Keynote, then you can marry them together using iMovie. There's all sorts you can do on this. You can even voice record onto Keynote and then export it as a movie. There's so much you can do with this. But we're going to export today as an animated GIF. And I tend to export as a medium file. And what is really great is you can choose your slide range. So you can choose between which ones you want. So looking at my slides, I know that I need slides 2 to 5. So I'm going to adjust those. Click on GIF options again at the top. You can change as well the speed of what they are. And also, if there's no transparency on your background, or if there's a transparency, you can put the transparent backgrounds on. So you can put that moving GIF into any other piece of work as well. I'm then going to click on export, and you'll start to see that the GIF come into life. If you click on share, you can then click on save image, and that will go directly into your photos. So if I go into my photos, you can see that my GIF is now in my photos. So you can see in the background, the colors have changed slightly, but that will be because of the quality of the GIF that you saved. If you save it as a large or extra large, you will get a clearer image. But obviously it depends on how you're going to use that GIF and where you're going to use that GIF. So yeah, this has loads of possibilities, and hopefully you'll give it a go, because everyone can draw. And if you have a look at the Everyone Can Create curriculum as well, there's loads of opportunities to develop drawing within your work. And also feel free to contact me on Twitter, or to look at my books, which you can find on the Apple Education Forum as well. Please feel free to reach out, because I think everyone's an artist, and every pupil and every teacher should have the opportunity to be creative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a proper masterclass in how you can go from having a blank page and an image from Google and then create something as charming and as funny and as personal as that. And my head is already spinning of different ways that could be used in my classroom with primary school children. And I'm sure Faye and Eoin, you two are the same as well. I think there are lots of very small little takeaways. And when you watch someone working, you pick up little like tricks that you hadn't realized. And when you use the selection tool to change the face, I didn't realize you could separate a particular part and then delete it. I've always been rubbing it out, then filling in the gap, and it's always been really messy. So just things like that as well are fabulous to watch. So thank you so much for demoing. It's been brilliant.
Thank you, Jacob.
It's been really good. I think we'll move straight on to Faye now, if that's all right. No pressure, Faye, but we've had 2 excellent demos so far. It's been 100% brilliant. So no pressure at all, but this one has to deliver.
Thank you. But yeah, I'm going to be talking today about Freeform, which is a fairly new Apple app, and actually one of my favourites at the moment. Just to introduce myself, I'm a digital coach at Halcyon International School in London, which is a one-to-one Apple device school. We're an international high school, pretty much paperless, so students use tech for everything, and lots of very engaged teachers who love to be creative and try out different apps. So I'm going to start by opening up Freeform, which is here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Freeform is for, and then show some different ideas for how it could be used, and also a few examples of how I've started using it in the classroom. So I'm going to start by opening this little brainstorm that I had earlier, which is all about different dog breeds. So Freeform is designed to be a note-taking and brainstorming mood board app. You can use it on your own, but you can also use it collaboratively as well. And one of the things that I really love about it is that it works across all devices. So it works on your iPhone, on your Mac, and on your iPad. So as you start to build up collections of notes, of materials, you can just really easily switch from one device to the other. If you're out and about with your phone, you can snap some quick pictures and put those into your Freeforms and so on. So the other thing I love about freeform is this. It is what's called an infinite canvas. So before, I used to take a lot of sketch notes using drawing apps, but it was always really frustrating because you have a limited amount of space to use. But freeform, it just lets you keep expanding and expanding your canvas. So your notes can grow and grow and grow as your ideas grow, which I love. So if you look at the top, there are different things that you can add to your freeform. So the first icon is to add a drawing. I'll do that later. The second one, if we tap that, that will add a sticky note, which you can then tap into and write anything in there. You can also change the color of the sticky notes too. So if I tap on there and then tap the little color picker, it's got all these lovely different default colors that you can use. The third icon is to add shapes. So it has the same shape library as other Apple apps like Keynote and Pages. And you can search through all of these and find ones that are suitable for your work. So I am going to look for a dog. So I can either scroll through or I can tap on the search bar up here. And I'm going to choose this little sausage dog. And I'm going to put that onto my page. And then same with the sticky notes, I can tap on the shape and tap the color picker and pick a color. And it doesn't just have those, the small number of colors you can choose from here. You can tap on the color wheel and you can choose from all of these ones, just like the ones when Laura showed the demo in Keynote. So I'm just going to choose this orange and then tap off. The next icon is to add text. So you can add just normal text and change the font, the size here. So I'm just going to do this. I'm going to make it really large. And I'm just going to write, which dog should I buy? So I'm going to put this as my title. I'll put this little shape underneath. So with the sticky notes, you can add as many as you want to the page, but the other really nice thing you can do is you can start to connect them. So if I go back to my shape library here, I'm just going to close that search down and go to basic. And there are three different kinds of sort of arrows and pointers that you can add. So you can add a straight line, you can add an arrow, or you can add this one. And the lovely thing about this one is it will snap and connect to your stickies as you're working. So as you hover over a sticky, it will get this little blue glowing line around it. That means it's stuck. And then you can reposition it using that green dot in the middle. And now whenever I pick up this sticky, the line will move with it and keep my notes really organized. Because what often happens when you're taking notes is you realize you suddenly need more space and you need to move everything around. So this makes everything really nice and quick. And then the final icon at the top is to add media, and this is incredibly useful. So you can add photos and videos from your camera roll. You can add a picture directly from your camera. You can scan documents as well. So this is really handy if you're sort of doing research or maybe even sort of keeping all of your important documents in one place. Maybe you're moving house and you want to have everything to do with your house buying in one place. You can use a scanner. You can add a link or you can insert a file. So I'm just going to add a link now and just show you what that looks like. So I'm going to go to Safari, and this is just an article that I found about different kinds of family dog. So I'm just going to copy that link. I'm going to go back into Freeform, and I could add it by going here and going to link, but I can also just tap and go to paste. And what I really love is that rather than adding it as a text link, which you have to click on, it automatically gives it a little thumbnail image and adds the title of the page or the article that you're linking to. So a really good way as well to collect resources. If students are doing research about a certain topic, they can put all the links in here and it looks really interesting and visual too. I'm going to show you a couple of other examples of freeform documents that I've been working on to show you some other kinds of things you could do with it. So I'm just going to go back. And I'm going to show you, again, this is a more traditional use of it, but this is a mood board. So my grade 6 students have been doing a project all about smoothies. So they've been designing smoothies for toddlers. And we've been using it to create mood boards. So all the sort of inspiration and ideas, recipes
went onto a freeform. And this is a sort of one I've put together using bits of different students' work, which they've kindly agreed to. So I've got a colour scheme there. I've got some sort of hand-painted label ideas that they put on, some AI-generated images as well that they use for inspiration, an actual sort of mock-up of their bottle with a label, and an idea for a logo as well. So again, just a really sort of nice visual way of keeping all of your ideas and notes in one place. I'm going to go back again. This is one that I did for myself recently. So I recently went to the South Coast, to Lyme Regis and Charmouth, to go fossil hunting. And there's so much information involved and so many things I wanted to learn before I went, and also to record while I was there, that I put it all onto a page here. So you can add maps. So just by adding a link from Apple Maps, pasting that in, it not only links to the map, but gives you a little sort of thumbnail of what the map looks like as well. I put an image of some of the fossils that we saw. I added a drawing as well. So I mentioned the drawing before. You can add a drawing by either tapping your Apple Pencil or tapping the little drawing icon up at the top. And all those drawing tools are the same ones that we saw in Laura's fantastic demo. So you can add crayon, you can add sort of fine line pen, rubber, fill tool, and so on. So a really nice way to, I really love combining the sort of digital text with hand-drawn imagery on these. I think that looks really lovely. So I've also included a YouTube video there, which is top tips for fossil collecting on Charmouth Beach, a little bit of info about equipment that we might need, something about Mary Anning, and then a little diagram of how the fossils are actually released. So you can sort of imagine, in a classroom, how this sort of thing might be really useful for students, especially if they're sort of putting out all the information and ideas that they have for something, or summarising a topic that they've been learning about. It could be anything at all. It could be the Tudors or ancient Egyptians, and they can just put everything on there that they know and have it all in one place. Now, I mentioned file types before. So up here, when I go to the Add Media, if you choose Insert From, you can go into your files and you can add different kinds of media. So I've actually added an audio recording there, which I did using voice notes. So I did the voice note while I was out and about, and then I put this into my freeform. So a really nice way of having lots of different media. I'll just go back and show you a couple more. So this is another really nice use of it. So you can also use it to send students resources to look at in a lesson. This is a really simple mock-up of some YouTube videos about different organs in our bodies. Now, I'm not a science teacher. I'm sorry if those organs are not quite where they should be. But the idea is that students can then access all these resources in one place. And then finally, this was one that I was playing with this week. One thing I love about freeform is that, it really is a blank canvas, and it's what you make of it. So you can almost use it to build your own mini activities and apps. So this one was a treasure hunt that I made in our local park. And I pre-drew it and made some little sticky notes and prompts and placeholders. And then the idea is that you follow the treasure hunt along the way, and then you add your media to the map. So this one is about, can you find crows in the park, and then make a little slow motion movie of one of the crows flying. So there's my little video that I did. Then if I go up here, can you find 3 different examples of flowering plants or weeds? And I made these little magnifying glasses, which students could then put the image into. What else do we have? We've got over here, we've got, now I'm going to shout out to Lindsay Stuttard here, who has been posting loads of amazing examples of using augmented reality models in freeform. So big shout out to her. So for this one, the idea is that you find a location and then you open up this AR model of a swan. Here this opens. And then you can place that into the real world and take a photograph of it. And I've done the same thing here with an augmented reality model of a tent. So students have to find a place to go camping, and then they place their augmented reality tent where they like to camp. So many different sort of creative potential uses of it. And I think what I really love is that, especially on Twitter at the moment, I'm seeing so many people exploring these and just inspiring everybody with new ways of using this app.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Faye. Freeform is a very new app, and already you've shown 5 really clever ways there of using it and using it in the classroom, which is incredible. The mood board that you showed, there's something very nice about the way you can just chuck everything into one place and not have to worry about it falling off the page onto the next page or lining up properly. It's very organic and it feels quite natural when you're working on it, I would say.
Yeah, it definitely does, and there is quite a few tricks as well that you can use to sort of streamline everything and make it easier. Like I got this tip from you actually, Jacob. So if you if you add a shape and you sort of specify a style. So for example, I've got this pink circle with a black outline. If I then tap the 3 dots, go to style, and then save as insert style, that means that every time I add a shape now, it's going to have that same style. Good tip there. Thank you, Jacob.
It's a good time saver, isn't it? It's a good time saver.
It's such a time saver, and it's one of those things. I mean, it really does save hours if you're doing a huge brainstorming board.
Owen, have you had much chance to use Freeform yet? How are you finding it if you have?
It's interesting. I absolutely loved Faye's treasure map idea. As a geography teacher, that's one I'm like, oh, that is absolutely genius, Faye. That's what a great way to scaffold activities as well for students. But it's I haven't I would give students a lot of choice in when they would use whether you want to do it in Keynote or Pages or on paper or with Freeform. It's an app students have just been finding themselves and very interested in how they're using it. But there's things like that treasure map ideas like that I definitely need to start doing a little bit more work developing some resources around. But that is inspirational. I love the colors in the smoothies example one. And that copying yourself, it's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, they're just very satisfying, aren't they? When they start to grow and they start to have lots of different media on them, I think they're really good fun.
And Laura, I can imagine for you with the drawing and the photography, it's probably a good way of creating like a portfolio and getting your students to share their work onto a board maybe and collaborating.
Definitely. It's something we've actually started developing in the design technology department of the school. Damien Parker, one of our fellow ATs, Damien's been using it to create revision resources for GCSE and A-level, so that they've got everything that they need from the research places to how it links to the practical elements that we've done, linking into keynotes that he's created for revision as well. So it's already really valuable, but it's something we started to explore for photographer research in photography at A-level, so that they can create the kind of research board before doing their written content. So it's almost like a brain dump area where they can collect everything together before writing their written content. So you can see how it can be used in English, in all subjects, just for collating content. But I think this is great, Faye. Just seeing this smoothies idea, I'm already going to go back to the food department of school and be like, you need to do this.
I think that's what's great about things like Smashing Apps, is you get, a really short, intense burst of like inspiration, and that's something you can then go and take back into your own settings and your own classrooms and explore a little bit more. If it's okay with you three, I'm going to share my little tip very quickly. It's only a short one, but it's something that I've been using quite a lot in class recently. And it's actually going back to Keynote again. And Laura, I'm hoping you're going to pipe up and say how great my drawing is. Okay, so I'm going to use Keynote as well. And the feature that I want to quickly show is called Keynote Live Video. Now, it's a fairly new addition to Keynote, but I've been finding that my students have been loving it. And there are 2 different ways I'm going to show you it working. So if we jump into Keynote first of all, and I'm going to go into my office desk here. This is a photograph that I took when my desk was a lot tidier than it is now, to be honest. And I then kind of went through bit by bit and started drawing over it, just like you did earlier. And I've kind of got to the stage now where I've got a desk here, and in the middle of my computer screen is actually a transparent see-through area, which means that I could put a photograph in there or even a video playing behind on my computer screen. And that's obviously great if I wanted to make like a short animation or a short video. But it might be that I actually want to have my face on that computer screen. I'm not sure why I necessarily want that right now, but that's what we're going to do. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the media button on the top toolbar, which is that one with the little mountain and the sun in there. And then from here, we're going to go to live video. Now, when you go to live video, you're going to get a little window just like this. Hello, hello, yeah. And obviously you can move this around the screen. The really cool thing is that when you play your presentation, that live video will be there as well. Now, if we come off of here, we can, of course, position this however we like, and I can put it in my computer screen like this. But you'll see straight away it's on top of my drawing. It's not ideal. So this is where having that transparency comes in, because what I can do is I can change the layer order, and I can push the video behind the screen. So I put this back in the position I want it to go. I'm then going to press the paintbrush, the format paintbrush on the top toolbar. And then under the Arrange tab, I have this little slider where it says Move to Front Back. And as I move that along, each notch will take it back a particular layer. Now it's behind the Bird of Paradise plant, and now it's behind the computer screen itself. So now when I play that presentation, it's as if I'm actually talking to you through the computer, which I'm doing on this computer as well. It's like computer inception. But that straight away creates a much more engaging way of sharing that live video. So for students, they might perhaps create an instructional video, or maybe they might do like a tutorial. Wait, they're the same thing, aren't they? They might have another use for this, and you can then engage them in that. You can use the back camera on the iPad as well. But there's one other way that live video works, which is super cool. And if we jump out of here and go to our news desk instead, again, this is a drawing that I've made together. I'm very proud of this. It's not great, but it'll do the job. Again, I could have a video in the actual TV screen, but I've got a symbol here of a person, and you can see when I'm moving it that that person is, again, using the layers. That person is behind the desk at the front. So what I could do is I could actually delete this person and then add another live video. And I'm going to put the live video there, make it a bit bigger, and I'm going to position this behind the desk using that same slider. I think that probably looks good. And then the really clever part of this, and it's my favorite thing about live video, is if I go onto the format paintbrush and then go onto the live video tab, I can turn off the background, which means that even with my messy office, I've now got a green screen effect where I can be presenting the news and you can't see all of the clutter behind me. It's such a clever little way of bringing a green screen effect into a video you're making in Keynote without actually needing a green screen at all. And again, if I press play, I could do a screen recording of this as I'm talking. Perhaps I'm typing on my desk or something, tapping the very, very tiny iPad. And you haven't got to have a fancy setup behind you. You've not got to have clever lighting. It just uses the camera and the AI built into Keynote to remove that background for you. So a really little simple short tip there, but a really interesting way of exploring the use of video in Keynote. And I could do a screen recording while this is playing and then save that as a movie file to use somewhere else. So I'm going to turn off the double Jacobs, hang on. Come back to this computer. And yes, so it's just a really short little tip there, but hopefully
so
a way
cool.
that perhaps... Pardon?
It's so cool, I love it.
Yeah,
it's simple, but it's effective, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we do a lot of... Sorry, Laura.
I can already see how that can work. I know in our French department, they do weather forecasts in French, and they traditionally use the green screen, ways that can take it to a whole another level now. And again, the media department, they don't know what's going to hit them next week when I go in with what they need to be doing with Year 9.
That's it, because I mean the green screen's amazing, but I feel like sometimes it can be a bit of a barrier for teachers because they have to, have to book it out, set it up, and when they've not got much time, that can be quite difficult. But that's amazing.
Yeah, that was same as Laura with the weather forecasting. I do that a lot in the classroom. We do it with green screen, but you'll have your graphics or your animations. But what's really cool about doing it this way is that you can actually get that all synced up a little bit more. I mean, it's a great skill to learn in iMovie or something as well in terms of editing and getting those things right. But you can have that level of interaction, I think, maybe with Keynote Live Video and removing the background again without the backdrop, without all that. It's fantastic.
The office that I'm in now, there's a very harsh overhead light and it's dark outside, so it's not a perfect situation for a green screen to work. There'll be shadows everywhere. And yet in Keynote, it makes a surprisingly good job of it with just literally 2 taps of the finger. So yeah, that's my little short contribution for tonight. So listen, thank you all so much for joining us. For Eoin, for Faye and for Laura, we've shared some really interesting tips tonight. We've learnt how to make a song using just one chord in GarageBand that literally anyone can do. We've learnt how to trace over drawings and then bring them to life and make them incredibly cute and amusing at the same time. And we've learnt how to use freeform to map out and organise ideas in a variety of different ways that wouldn't otherwise have been possible. And I'm really grateful that the three of you have taken time this evening to share that with us all. And I hope that people watching are finding this useful as well. And I'm hoping that when you go into work tomorrow or next week or whenever it is, that maybe one or two of these ideas might spark something else for you. And you can then take that into your classroom and impact your students as well. And you know what? I think I speak for all of us when I say we'd love to see what you can come up with off the back of this session. You know, you can tag us all in Twitter. You can share it on the Apple Education community and we'll see it on there and we can interact with you there too. And yeah, we can't wait to see what you can create. If by some miracle you've not had enough of my face yet, there's another Smashing Apps tomorrow if you're watching this live, which is going to be looking at coding on the iPad. And if you're not watching this live, it will be linked on the end in a minute. And if you want to stay up to date with more Smashing Apps and iPad lessons for your classroom, I've got to say it, please press that subscribe button down below there somewhere, and then you won't miss anything from the YouTube channel as well. So that's it from me. Eoin, Faye, Laura, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you all soon.